Hello, this is Red Robot, and we are here today with some terrible tactics. We are using the Cow Jumper. It's exactly as it sounds. We're using the Cow Mangler with the Base Jumper. The Base Jumper is one of those pretty forgotten weapons. It's a parachute. I remember when it was first coming out, that blog post came out talking about it. Everyone was super hyped, super excited. What was the air acceleration going to be like? What was the air control going to be like? As it turned out, the weapon was a little bit underwhelming. Sure, it's incredibly fun to use, which makes it a good weapon in my books, but you know, to use it effectively, to do something interesting with it, not so easy, and one of the ideas that were brought up at the time was to use it with the Cow Mangler. As we all know, the Cow Mangler's major downside is the fact that you have to charge up an attack, and you won't see it much in this video, but your movement speed is severely decreased while charging up that attack. So, if you can rocket jump and then hover with the base jumper while you're charging it, that's excellent because you can avoid damage and get in position to deal that huge mini crit charge shot that also sets them on fire for a brief amount of time. Although most of the time you'll just see me setting myself on fire, I think you'll find. Now, it's got to be said, I made a terrible tactic with the Cow Mangler and the base jumper before, that being the Ghost Soldier inspired by one of Star's videos. Unfortunately, being on fire while having the base jumper out no longer causes you to hover in the air, so this strategy is completely dead, but it's good to see there's still, you know, a fun, wacky combo to pull off with these two weapons left in the game. It was kind of weird, when I was trying to pull this tactic off, it felt a bit like I was using a kind of ranged Market Gardener. It actually has a few interesting similarities with the Market Gardener, only that, of course, because it's ranged, it's a little bit more flexible with how close you can be to enemies, but at the same time it has a lot more kind of wind up, and because you can't use the rocket jumper with this, you're going to take a ton more damage, obviously, from those rocket jumps. You can't wear gunboats either, so you're going to have to save up your health. Luckily, the base jumper prevents you from taking full damage, so there's that taken care of already. Now, I'd actually had a ton of video ideas this week, but none of them really kind of captured my interest like this one. It's weird, this tactic's been known about for quite a while. It's not a new idea, but just for some reason using it recently felt so fresh and so new, despite me not doing exceedingly well with it, more just like kind of moderately well. It was such a blast to play with. I just kept playing and got a ton of footage because I just couldn't stop myself, basically. Which leads me on to my next point. Due to the nature of casual, the fact that instead of just being stuck in Valve payload rotation, I can search for any map I'd like. I actually got to play Freight, and Freight is a ton of fun. Haven't played it in a while. Sure, there might be a few issues with its last point, but in general, it's a great fun map. So many interesting little flank routes you can go through, and a big, huge open area between the on the middle point rather, for you to use the strategy. Initially, when I started up this tactic, I was going for kind of really horizontal distance-based rocket jumps, but I found that actually dumb, awkward vertical rocket jumps gave you a ton more airtime, which means you had enough time to reload and then charge up your next shot. There's nothing worse than being in the right position at the wrong time, not having your rocket charged up at the right moment. Unfortunately though, having lots of airtime turned out to not be the perfect solution. Now this last point was incredibly painful. As you can see, they have snipers, they have heavies, they have sentries. All three of these are the most direct counter you can get to the base jumper Cow Mangler that I could even think of. First of all, sure, you can disable the buildings, but you will never destroy them with the Cow Mangler. This weapon does no damage. That's the other weakness of the Cow Mangler. Also, when you're floating through the air, charging up your shot, Sniper has free reign to just shoot at your head. And I think I should have been, you know, ducking and diving more with my base jumper. You can disable and enable it as much as you want to kind of just throw them off. But having to move, avoid the sentries, and aim the damn thing was a little bit too much for me to think about. So I just ended up getting absolutely rolled by the Sniper and the sentries over and over again. One thing I could have done... Oh, also, look at this. You can shoot through this little gap if you're not dumb like me and you blow yourself up. That's actually really helpful for clearing the point. Look, I just taught you something today if you didn't already know that. Besides, who even plays this map? As I was saying before, what I should have done, instead of trying to kind of edge the sentries like this, I did get some really close calls to taking out these engineers. What I could have done is jumped over, rode the sentry upwards, use its knockback to get me up in the skybox, then base jumper down from up there. It'd be a lot harder for the Sniper to hit me when I'm kind of directly above him, and I can kind of wiggle around. It kind of protects my head that way. I never actually figured that out in this game, but you know... Just look at all these fails over and over again. This was so painful. Freight last can be a giant pain, and this loadout was not helping. Mostly my fault. Like, if I had gone demo, if I had gone soldier, it's just, you know, what happens when you're trying to record something. And look at that. Heavy crits? Come on, man. A miracle occurred and that stalemate was finally broken, and here we are back on mid. Mid is definitely a lot more fun to play around with the base jumper and the cow mangler on, just because you can use these kind of buildings to sneak around. You can charge up while close to one and then just unload on the point, setting everyone on fire and dealing mini crit damage. One thing that's important to remember about mini crits is that while they don't have damage drop off, they don't have the damage ramp up you can get from getting close to enemies, so you will still do generally more damage when you're closer with a mini crit than you would further away, so it is quite important to get close, but I think I'm a little bit overzealous with that at times, and you see me going for the this is the most pointless thing I've ever done in my life. Sure, I did 140 damage to that heavy and set him on fire. He doesn't even care, he doesn't even know I did it, and then I just get roasted by a pyro. What a clever boy. Anyway, this engineer really needs to die, so I decide to grant him that wish, and look, there's water. There's actually a point later on when I set someone on fire, and they just completely forget that water exists and die because of it. Now, you might be noticing a little bit of a common trend in that I jump in, get a kill or do a lot of damage, and then immediately die, and that was kind of what was going on. Now, my choice of melee can alleviate that. For the most part, I was using the escape plan. This was great for getting away because, of course, after jumping in to a crowd of people without any blast damage resistance, you're going to be low, and that escape plan is necessary to escape. However, I was also trying out the disciplinary action. That didn't really work so well, just because, sure, it's a better melee weapon for combat, in my opinion, but the real problem wasn't the fact that I couldn't kill them, it was the fact that my health was so low. And if you ever needed any proof that gunslinger NGs have no souls, this guy put a mini in our second to mid, like, flank waterway that no one ever uses. I'm pretty sure barely anyone knows it exists. As I say that, two people are looking down it. Look, just ignore me. Anyway, these were amazing. If they were getting kind of bottlenecked in those two choke points, you can get all the way behind them. And that pesky sniper who had been killing you over and over again on last, you can just get above him, put your parachuter, and absolutely blow the shit out of him. Except he survived, so I'm not really sure. And then I kill myself with the fire, so not the greatest victory ever, but still, come on, a pretty good job, right? Revenge is sweet. As the game progressed, I was getting a little bit better idea of what to do. You got to kind of play around with what the enemy expects. So you see here, this engineer runs towards the water. It's not going to work. I drop down. Wait, no, I'm coming back up. And then I rocket jump over, spot the sniper looking at me, drop down behind the barrier, and then unload a charge shot on the soldier. So if you get a little bit better at maneuvering around, knowing the sight lines, knowing how to break them, you can do a lot better. And see this demo, he knows what he's doing, but he's not predicting the wildly strafing base jumper soldier charging up a shot, and he goes down because of it. Now this is another strategy I definitely should have abused more. The base jumper allows you to kind of flank enemies from extremely unexpected angles, and being above a doorway that has no... oh. Look, just ignore that. Being above a doorway that has absolutely no kind of footing above it can be really super unexpected, and the base jumper can let you just attack enemies from places they'd never dreamed they'd be vulnerable from. And coming up is another example of an extremely well-timed cow mangler base jumper. Doing this made me wonder, hang on, just how much more effective would I be doing this with a regular rocket launcher and just shooting regular rockets and getting random crits? Actually, now that I think about it more, if I just use the regular rocket launcher with the base jumper this way, I'd be putting out a ton more damage, getting random crits, which means I'd be actually finishing people off rather than doing just 140 plus fire. That's probably a video for another day, just using the rocket jumper like it was the cow mangler. Because while this weapon has its moments, like, look at this, the amount of sustained kind of mini crit and fire I can put out on this point. While it has its moments, it's definitely nowhere near as consistent and reliable as the rocket launcher. Still though, it wouldn't be a terrible tactic if it was good, and this certainly isn't, but it was a ton of fun, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. Anyway, that's all I got for you right now. Catch you next time.